This is Snakes and Otters, a pointless discussion of eternal questions. Get ready. We're about to live in your head rent-free.
Welcome to episode 203. I am Martin.
And I'm Robert.
And I'm Francis.
I'm Marcus.
And I'm Cajun.
So here we are, together again. I think this is Cajun's first visit to Studio M.
It is.
It is.
Here on the 30th floor of Nakatomi Plaza, down the hall from Ellis, behind the waterfall.
It never gets old.
It never gets old. That's the same thing. That's right.
Takagi is a nice guy, but he likes kimchi at lunch, so don't follow him down the hallway.
Fart jokes never get old either. They just still work.
So, gentlemen, welcome to Studio M. Today is perhaps our first true crime episode.
Yeah, you said
sort of a true crime, but you were talking though about doing the cultural.
Yeah.
So it sort of is, sort of isn't.
Yeah.
Sort of is, but it's Helter Skelter.
Helter Skelter. Helter Skelter.
The story of the Manson crimes. So you're exactly right. I don't want to dive too far into what happened. Of course, we've always got to do a tiny bit of overview. But from there, I do want to delve into what happened after this cultural aftermath of these crimes. So, of course, the story is, a little bit old. It's August of 1969. And with the participation of and at the direction of Charles Manson, a failed musician, con man, and convict, he and Clem Grogan, Tex Watson, Linda Kasabian, Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, and Leslie Van Houten.
Holy mackerel, he got every single one of them. That's right.
Go out into
He spent all night last night practicing that.
Yep.
They go out into the Los Angeles night, and at a home that Manson believed was occupied by music producer Terry Melcher, who he had some dealings with, but was actually occupied by actress Sharon Tate, 8.5 months pregnant, and her husband Roman Polanski, the film director, who was overseas directing a film. And Tate was being visited by her friend and famous hairdresser Jay Sebring, coffee heiress Abigail Folger, and her boyfriend Wojciech Frykowski.
Okay.
Close enough.
That's close enough.
Close enough. And a young man, Stephen Parent, was visiting the caretaker of the property. And the Manson family broke into the home and murdered everyone. The very next night, Manson took them to another home in Los Angeles of Lino and Rosemary LaBianca. Lino's a supermarket executive, and murdered the two of them. And the only reason they were caught and apprehended was that they were also involved in a car theft ring, and the sheriff's department raided the Spawn Ranch where they were all living, and Susan Atkins began telling her cellmate what they had all done, and who, of course, immediately snitched on her for more lenient treatment for her crimes. And
Duh. I mean,
yes, So, of course, the trial was massively sensational. Just
probably the most sensational trial since the Scopes monkey trial in the 20s.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
It captured the imagination of the nation. And this is and we should talk about the milieu
word boner
that was going on around this, because this is a outgrowth or symbiotic relationship, even parasitic, with the culture at the times.
Right. It's a huge marker in the history of the counterculture.
Yes, Manson's rise is definitely tied to the summer love, all that hippie crap in San Francisco and in California.
Yes.
And I'm not saying it caused it, but it lent credibility because he went to San Francisco, set himself up as some kind of guru, which is the beginnings of the cult.
Right. And of course, all the women were broken, rejected from their homes, that kind of
vulnerable.
thing.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely vulnerable.
He found, I think it was Squeaky Fromm, he just found sitting at a bus stop,
Yeah.
walked up to her and immediately said, Your family's thrown you away, haven't they?
Mhm.
And she, felt like he knew something about her from that statement.
Yeah, and that's and we'll get to that, but that's
So, and
that's
course,
what's so crazy about all
it
this.
began to emerge that he controlled them with sex and drugs.
Yeah, I was just going to say about the squeaky from thing. In the 60s, how many people, women especially, could you have walked up to at a bus stop and said that, and they felt like that was true? I mean, so it's not like he saw.
Right. I mean, he's a con man.
Right. It's part of that cultural milieu that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that Francis mentioned. All the kids felt disaffected from
Yes.
their parents.
Yes.
So it's not like this guy was a genius. I mean, he was a genius in that controlling sense,
Yeah.
but he didn't have any special insight into anybody.
He just knew what buttons to push somehow. But I think it's
Well, I think just the odds were with
Jail.
that's right. Yeah.
Well, that-
jail had
He'd been a convict. He'd been in and out. Even up to that point, he'd been in and out of prison or
Yes.
boys' homes
At
Yeah.
least
his
twice.
whole life.
right, but still, something he has become the apex of con men, among others.
Yes,
We talked
yes.
about this in the show prep, but he's easy to get his arms around because of his sensationalistic way he speaks and talks
Right.
about it. And you sit here and think, how the hell did this happen? How does anybody have developed that superpower, so to speak, Marcus?
Well, I mean, you get that a lot in the various religious cults, like we were saying earlier.
Yeah.
But one of the things that's peculiar with the Manson crimes is this is the first major mass murder and cult sensationalist crime thing to happen since really the advent of TV in every household.
Yes.
Yes,
And
that's a good point.
That's
That's
what
very
happened.
important.
The other thing that happened with this was you had Vincent Bugliosi, the bug.
Bugliosi,
affectionate-
yes, the
Bugliosi,
prosecutor,
Bugliosi, yes,
Vincent Bugliosi.
who really played the press.
Yes,
I
yes.
mean, then the next time you really had this kind of thing happen was probably O.J. Simpson.
O.J. Simpson.
Absolutely. Yeah,
with
there's
Um,
the
connections.
Yeah.
photogenic, telegenic
Exactly.
participants.
So the U.S. we had switched from radio for all of our news and information to TV.
And
and
newspapers,
newspapers,
to,
and
to
to
TV.
TV.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you had a TV in every home, and this was on every night.
Oh,
Yeah, and that's you got to remember that. So who was the mass murderer that was the serial killer that was going around in the early '60s? New York or Boston?
Boston
Boston
Strangler.
Strangler.
Boston Strangler. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the difference, because the difference between that and Manson is not that so much the media, but that the victims were famous.
This is true.
That's
Yes,
true. That's
yes.
All of
another
them.
That
wrinkle.
all of these, it's like a perfect storm.
Wealthy, famous,
Good looking.
white
Yes.
victims. And that plays into as well, because as you mentioned, Bugliosi, what he would eventually bring before the jury during the trial is that Manson's intent in, quote, brainwashing
Mhm.
the family was to bring about Helter Skelter.
Yes.
What he perceived to be the Beatles signaling for him to start a race war.
Mhm.
He wanted the crimes to be blamed on the Los Angeles black community, thinking that would then start a race war.
Mhm.
He felt like the black community would win the war, but would not know what to do after.
And this
And then Charlie and his people would then show them what to do.
white
to rule
savior
the world.
complex.
Oh my
Exactly.
gosh!
yeah,
Yeah.
Yes.
absolutely.
Yes.
Well, this is, and I forget exact dates on this, but this is coterminous, very close to the Watts riots that are taking place in Los Angeles.
Yeah, so the crimes are in
Um,
69. The
yeah, and-
trial is in 71, I
The
believe.
Watts riots were before that.
Yeah, Watts riots
Yeah.
I think were '67.
That's
because
correct, but it's
they were
but
the
it's
same
not-
summer as the Detroit riots.
Right, so it's not that far. This is one of the things that certainly influenced Manson is because
Yes.
you've seen this.
Mhm.
That there's.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he
they are
thinks he
ripe
can. Yeah.
for this in his
He-
mind.
He thinks
Powder
that
keg.
these
much
events
so.
are ready to go and that the murders will tip the thing over. And so, these markers, these things these dominoes that are the death knell of the counterculture. Again,
Mhm.
riots, Altamont, these Manson crimes in Los Angeles. It really turns the country against the counterculture. That the
Mhm.
mainstream now feels all of that talk about peace and love and let's hug and get along was all crap. That they're really violent sociopaths.
And this is
which
also
at the time was actually not true. Unlike one
Mhm.
might say
Now,
at other times. Yeah, all right. I was going to try and dance around that, but yeah, unlike now.
well, and some of this too. This is pre-Kent State.
Yes,
Yeah.
this is
Kent
pre-Kent
State,
State.
So this is-
72.
yeah,
Yeah.
and which would swing the pendulum back a little bit.
right, and of course, again with Vietnam, Tet is in '68.
Right. I'm glad you brought up Vietnam because if you want to talk about the broad canvas,
Mhm.
that's what all this is being painted over.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
That's really without Vietnam, none of this potentially happens.
Yeah.
Well, this is also a time of
I wouldn't bet on
tremendous.
that.
Well,
This
it'd
is
be different though.
this is also a time of tremendous societal violence, the likes of which we really have not seen.
it's body blows
since.
one after the next after
Yeah,
the next.
Because
and-
you've got King is assassinated, RFK is
Right.
assassinated.
Yeah. Right. At the same time.
You've got all these.
You're only-
Nixon,
6
Watergate coming on
yeah,
after that.
Yeah,
Nixon
yeah.
comes after.
75.
the reemergence of Nixon, is
Yeah.
is felt very keenly by the population. It's
The Democratic Convention riots.
riots in
68.
Chicago in
which was
'68.
which was the year before.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah. So there is. So you use the word Cajun powder keg.
Mhm.
The entire culture really was a powder keg. So in that sense, Manson saw something that was real. There is now
Yes.
whether or not he was seeing the right powder keg. I
The
would question.
explosive materials are there all together. Nobody had quite lit the fuse yet.
Mhm.
Right. And obviously his plan to light that fuse was a little insane to begin with. I mean, that goes without saying.
yeah.
But I mean, it just, I think just the whole plan was stupid. Never mind insanely evil.
Yeah. Well, and it was supposed to be carried out somewhat differently. They were supposed to have taken personal items from the homes and left them in black neighborhoods,
Mhm.
and they kind of panicked and didn't do that. So that
That's
was
the whole key, right there.
yeah. So that was part of Charlie's thing with the second night on the night of I believe it was the 9th and the 10th of August when they went to the La Bianca home. It's like, you all didn't do it right last time. I'm going to show you how this time.
Mhm.
So can we say that Charlie helped set up the Taliban by giving them ideals? I mean, he was the first of the modern few histories here to
Yeah.
set up the chaos and everything like
Well,
that in
there's
the
some
public areas, or try to anyway.
What?
Mhm.
But I've got an interesting and obscure fact for you.
Go ahead.
You say he did a lot of control with drugs and sex and so forth. Well, the funny thing is, and you know I love obscure facts and stuff when we do this, the great American actor, Danny Trejo,
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
he actually was at the mansion a couple of times there, and he made the comment that Manson was such a good master hypnotist that he could have them close their eyes and they would believe that they were smoking pot and doing cocaine while not doing nothing at all. He was so good at it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it was a skillful application of LSD primarily at the ranch. He would gather them all out in the middle of nowhere at the ranch. They felt dependent on him for safety and security out at,
Well, that's
at the
the key.
ranch.
That's
yeah,
the key.
Uh-huh.
and he he sexually abused each of the women pretty much, and shared them and traded them around with the men that were involved. Had Squeaky become involved with the guy that owned the ranch, so they wouldn't have to pay anything to stay there.
Yeah.
Well, Squeaky paid.
Yeah, Squeaky paid, but none of the rest of them did.
She was firmly under his control, though.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
When you say squeaky, it takes me back to the Boat Reynolds movie out in the middle of the wilderness there.
Deliverance?
Deliverance.
Squeal, piggy, squeal.
Oh,
Well, one of the bad things about this is that a good friend of mine, he can never remember the name of one of the cantors, one of the ladies that used to cantor at our parish, and he always called her Squeaky because she had a bit of a high voice. But God love her, she got up there. I mean, she was fine, just a little high, and she got up there and did it. So I have no problem with that because I know how I sing. But he called her Squeaky. So every time we talk about this, all I see is her face. So
that wasn't her real name, though, was it?
no,
Lynette.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Lynette
yeah,
Squeaky Fromm.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
yeah, but everybody knows her. As
Everybody
Squeaky.
knows her as Squeaky. Exactly. So it's just
Yeah.
kind of a thing.
And many of the girls, again, as part of like moving away from their previous lives, adopted pseudonyms at the ranch.
Yes,
Susan Atkins, I think, was always known as Sadie Mae at the ranch and things
the
like
new name. I mean, so I think that's something that's kind of interesting about him. He is the textbook example of how to create and control a cult.
Yeah.
Groom. He
and-
grooms expertly.
Yes, I mean, it was before the grooming became a real
Real
term.
word, yeah.
The whole thing about the new name, that I think is one of the things
Yes.
that is
Take away their
it's
identity.
genius
Yeah.
because yes, it breaks them from the old identity and gives them a new one that is only rooted in him.
and can be filled by what he wants it filled with.
Exactly.
He can, once you've broken your identity, then you break your morals, your everything.
Right.
Everything about it can be broken down and
Because you're building
rebuilt.
something from scratch.
So can we translate this over to wives and girlfriends, calling us sweetie and darling and dear? They're just breaking down our identities after they've got a hold of us.
Only,
Wow.
Only if they shave your head like when you go into boot camp.
But there is something to be said for that. Because that process is a form of transformation.
Well,
It is.
And that's kinda
in
what-
some ways
you're
you
onto
are
something.
right.
That's right. You're onto something there. For
Okay,
sure.
because
It's not deranged and psychopath, no. But
well,
but it's how we treat one another, though. It sets the expectations.
That's also
So-
what made it so easy for him to do that, because
Right.
there is precedent for this being done in a
Oh, yeah.
non-threatening manner.
All the women thought Charlie loved him.
oh yeah,
Right.
he had a master plan. I mean, he had this all planned out in his head, eventualities and so forth. When you get into it, it's just like the one I forget which girl it was, but he was saying Charlie already had it set. If he went to jail, he's going to act insane in the courtroom. He'd be insane. He'd give us cues when we all met with the lawyer to plan out for the court day that if he did a certain motion or something, we'd all just go nuts. I mean, this man had a plan planned out, and he was not dumb. His IQ tested at 120 at one time in prison.
The street smart, and again, having been in prison and in close confinement a great deal of his life, he was a great observer of interpersonal behavior and knew how to manipulate people all the way around. One of the interesting aftermaths to me is Los Angeles freaked out.
Yeah.
You mentioned like Watts riots, and it's like, oh well, that happened way over there.
Well, yes, and it happened to that part of town none of us go to anyway.
None of us go to.
Right. Yeah.
But this really took like mainstream wealthy neighborhoods in Los Angeles, and made them all just insane.
This is something that wouldn't happen again until the Rodney King.
Yeah,
issues.
I mean it was panic time.
Well, yeah, because I mean, this
And
one of their own got it in a very grisly
Yeah, yeah.
fashion.
So, this was the start of, well, we were going to go buy guns and lock our doors. It's really a transformation of the way people felt about their personal security in Los Angeles and eventually across the country. The idea of, well, there's no reason to lock doors. Who's going to come in the house?
True.
Charlie and his family might come in the house now.
And there's something to be said for that, and that's just one of those other markers of, I don't want to call it growing up as a society, because that kind of, but it is somewhat inevitable that we've gone from innocence to experience. Like Hotel California, you can check out, but you can never leave.
Yeah, exactly.
You've reached a point where you recognize this world is not as Leave It to Beaver and Father Knows Best has portrayed to us.
Danny Thomas and
all
Mayberry.
those, much as we tried and wished it that way, that those times can never come again. And we've talked about it.
Yes, and I think that's important real quick.
Yeah.
Because at first, I think the road you were going sounded, and I think you didn't end up there, but I think it's good to play this out a little.
Yeah.
Is that it's not that we woke up to reality
Right.
so much as reality had changed.
That's right. Yes.
Yes.
And that is a different thing.
Yeah,
Very much so,
I
yeah.
really do
It
think
has
so.
changed, yeah.
And
Because
it wasn't just a panic; it was a realization that the world is different.
Vietnam
and
had a lot to do with that.
It had been becoming different
And
for
it was-
several years. But
that's
Charlie
it.
was the
It was,
Yeah.
in many respects, he pushed it over the cliff in many ways.
Well, having that on your TV every night, and I know Imperator needs to say something here, but I think that when you're exposed to graphic images of any kind, it desensitizes you,
Very much so.
Yeah.
whether it be pornography or violence. Having the backdrop of Vietnam on television every night, I think, does have a subtle influence. Maybe not the overt one that I think you were objecting to, Cajun, but I think that that subtle influence of seeing the dehumanization of people every night on television and seeing people like you, look like you,
Right.
like regular Americans, doing it to others. There's a subtle psychological
Especially
effect.
the young women, because
Well,
yes.
it's
they really
interesting
did
you
look
say
like
this.
regulars, just suburban girls.
Yeah, it's interesting you say this too, because you've Robert, you've kind of caught on to something, and whether this was inevitable in the culture or not, but Roe versus Wade was right after this, right around the same period.
It's
of
about
time.
3 years, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
So it's
71,
All,
yeah.
So you're talking about a very much we are learning to dehumanize very quickly,
Yeah.
and that is a very chilling aspect of our
I
society.
think we always knew, but it's it's been industrialized.
Yeah,
Yeah.
on that note, though, we were talking about the cultural influences of Manson and so forth. There were over 20 serial killers in the L.A. area alone throughout the 70s and early 80s. I mean, how much did he influence in that happening, or did it just bring it more to the forefront?
Well, that's a good question because
That's a large number.
It
In a
is.
5-mile radius, 10-mile radius, basically.
so to be a serial killer, you have to have you have to murder 3 people in basically the same fashion.
Different times.
usually-
It's separate
Yeah,
incidents.
it's separate incidents, yeah. There's factors that go into that. Once
Sometimes
you hit,
it evolves and so forth.
yeah, but it's generally similar. And up until this point, it was a lot easier to get away with being a serial murderer because you didn't have the media attention.
Mhm.
Yes.
There wasn't a 24-hour news cycle and all of that kind of stuff. The first real serial killer in the U.S. was the guy that was concurrent with the Chicago World's Fair in the 1890s. I forget his name.
Mhm.
He's set up as a doctor or a pharmacist. I forget exactly what it was now. Eric Larson wrote a great book, Devil in the White City. Loved it. Is all
Yeah.
about that.
Mhm.
Right.
And nobody really understood what was going on. Granted, it was 100 years prior to this, or 80 years, but nobody really understood this concept of a serial killer. And so, even though this is 80 or 90 years later, I think it takes a while for that to
for that consciousness to soak in.
Yeah.
Communicative technology, like you said,
Yeah.
newspapers, TV, and so forth. Nobody was making the connections between.
Exactly. You
some
can
of
be a
these
serial
going
killer
on.
across the entire United States, but nobody would know until the states or the communities talk to one
well,
another.
Interstate killer.
Well,
I mean, there was one exactly that.
Yes.
I mean, Jack the Ripper is the only precedent that you have,
Right.
and that's
Known, yes. Yeah.
that became a cultural sensation.
I hear that I just read recently that Scotland Yard now suspects that there wasn't just one Jack the Ripper.
I think it's probably likely. Yeah.
That even though there were 5 deaths, there was probably some copycat stuff going on.
Sure.
there.
Yeah.
So even that early, there's copycats.
Yes,
Yeah.
which is kind of one of the things I want to circle back to, because we've talked about that.
Yeah.
That this began something here,
Yes.
which goes back to your entire premise here is
Right.
the cultural impact.
Right.
Here.
Because
It changed
you're-
us.
Yeah. I mean, you're a loser. You're a nobody. How can I be famous? How can I be somebody? Well, I can be like Charlie,
Mhm.
Well, yeah.
or I can be like Richard Ramirez, and we see that. That's one of our
Menendez brothers,
fears.
We can go on.
Yeah, I
and
mean,
on
we
and
we
on and on.
we fear that now with the mass shootings or the spree killings. We fear that if we talk about this guy and put him in the news, someone's going to copy him.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well,
you
it's,
know,
it's not even direct copying nowadays.
Yeah,
What's happening is the news, information cycles, and everything else have changed drastically again.
Yes.
Yeah.
And nowadays we've got all of these influencers, and you don't have to really be anything to be famous. In
Yeah.
quotes.
That's true. You can be famous for being famous.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
The
what-
Kardashians.
I was going to say,
Perfect
if you didn't
example.
say it, I was going to.
That's-
Paris
Uh,
Hilton and what was the other one? Her friend
Nicole
Richie.
Nicole
Nicole Richie.
Richie and
Yeah, those are the
stuff,
2
yes.
originators of famous for being.
And-
the Kardashians are a favorite shibboleth here.
Exactly.
Yes, they are.
But yeah, push the button on that one.
Oh, no.
Yes.
Word boner.
Yeah, that one.
Excellent.
Right.
Shibboleth,
Definitely
yes, very
deserved
good.
it.
But now we're to a news cycle where, you look at your Facebook news feed, and you'll see something about somebody's cat or what have you in Germany now. Oh, they had 3 million views, and all of a sudden it's in the news.
Right. Yes, that's a great example of being famous for being famous.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's
News about
it is
the news
and,
almost.
And prior to the Mansons,
It's very incestuous.
Yeah.
prior to the Mansons, with the advent of television in every home, the closest thing you would have had to that would have been probably in, I guess, was it 28, 29, Lindbergh?
Oh, yes,
Lindbergh
the
did
Yes,
that?
the Lindbergh
30s.
There was some of that.
Yes.
So, I mean, you would have,
That-
Sacco and Vanzetti
that-
and Leopold and Loeb and these
Exactly,
other
but-
sensational crime trials.
Well, also
But that
don't
was-
forget JFK's assassination too,
Yeah,
which
but
was,
those-
which was
those
very.
were
It was a very singular
Those were
event.
the
thing.
It was, yeah,
beginning
but it
of
was-
radio's transformation of bringing sensationalism to the forefront of every household.
Well,
And before that, it was newspapers.
but
Yeah.
you know what? I think where that sensationalism really started was the newsreels of the 30s and 40s.
A good deal of
Interesting.
it.
Hearst.
Yeah.
Hearst newspapers.
Yeah.
Oh well, yes,
Is-
yeah.
you know,
the
that-
Spanish-American War,
You know,
definitely.
the
Oh, yeah.
the purple prose and yellow journalism.
Right.
Mhm.
But I mean, when you think about the newsreels, especially the wartime newsreels,
Sure.
Oh yeah.
Propaganda.
the propaganda, sensationalism, and degradation of those we don't like.
Yeah.
I mean, they perfected it.
That's
Oh,
true
yeah.
because World War One they didn't have the technology at the time. It was
Right.
silent at their. I mean,
Yeah, it's kind of hard to be, bombastic when everything's silent.
that's right. I mean,
Yeah.
newspapers had it, but it
Yeah.
really wasn't. It didn't have near the impact that it
No.
did in
Well, and
World War
of
Two.
course, and then newspapers are 2 and 3 editions a day.
Oh,
Right.
absolutely, yeah.
You know, almost continuous printing. So this is really, really, really good stuff. This is exactly what I was hoping we would do. So, we've talked a little bit here about, the transformation of the individual for like your security and safety going across the country, the closed doors, the understanding of this sensationalism now. So there's a couple other pieces I want to hit, but what are we doing on time?
30 minutes. Yeah.
We are at 27 minutes.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
I think that means word boner.
Oh, sorry.
Daggone, he pushed the wrong button.
That's okay. We can always do a word boner. Bourbon break.
I love it.
So-
Bourbon break. So I have poured some more of my Old Forester Statesman that I enjoy greatly.
I almost went with that. I have not had
Yes,
that.
I need to do that next time.
There's only
Same
one
here.
one or two slurps left, so you
Okay,
need
so
to
one of us.
You go ahead.
Okay, I'll take it. That's
okay. But Old Forester Statesman is mellow, smooth, complex flavor. I really like it.
I love mostly anything with the Old Forester name is one of my go-tos.
Yes,
I do.
that is just phenomenal stuff. From that low end bottle to the top.
That's right.
So I'm
Just
starting to
good
see
top to bottom.
the Whiskey Row series more and more in stock in places.
I know because it was
So
very.
it's-
It was so popular you couldn't find it. I had to,
now it's back.
yeah, good because I'm glad they're making it again. Because I had to hunt to get
Yeah.
some of those.
But I can find all four now:
Yeah.
1870, 1897, 1910, and 1920.
Right, yeah.
are out there.
1920s I could find, and I think the 1897, but the other two.
1910 was really hard to find for a while.
Oh yeah, that one and the 18. But I think I might like the 1870 best of all. Believe it or not,
Is that the
the Frontier whiskey.
Yeah,
yeah. It's that original.
Yeah.
the
mash
original? Yeah, that's what I was looking
that
for.
they had. It
So-
really is good.
So I poured Francis and Robert a snort of Wild Turkey Long Branch.
See, absolutely, and and actually I haven't partaken yet. So
Yes, this we first had at Cajun's some time ago when we went down when we took we took your spawn, didn't we, Francis?
that's correct. That's right. Yes,
Yes.
Indiana.
Indiana, yes, thank you.
Indiana.
Yes.
We named the dog Indiana.
That's right.
We took Indiana down and had a wonderful day.
We did.
Had
Yeah.
great smoked meats. Went to the place Monks Road
Log still.
Log still.
Log
Thank
still.
you.
Distillery,
Yes.
That's right. Yep. On the
Yes,
backside of your property.
On the back. Yes, got to
On the
see
backside of the
where
ranch.
Yeah. That's right.
got to see where Cajun grows his bourbon seeds.
That's right.
Just a wonderful time. But
It
yes,
was-
Which is about 5-6 weeks off from coming in.
I was really impressed with those pictures you sent. That was some tall.
It's pushing over 7 feet at this point.
That
All
was
this
impressive.
rain this season is really
Right
been
about
good
that
for
time of the
growth.
We
year.
had a
guys,
very
you know.
good growing season,
Well-
and it looks awesome.
For the time, because granted, in Michigan the growing season starts later. But the saying that my I always heard from my dad and some of the people out there I knew that farmed. Because actually, there's some kids in my school, and one of the rural places I lived that did farming was knee high by the 4th of July. And you're like head high by the 4th of July. So
that's the way it is in Kentucky. Yeah, it's
High as an elephant's eye.
Well, the last few years been very, very dry. I mean, it's been pretty bad the last few years going on. This is kind of a turnaround. We'll see if it continues.
That
That
was
new
some
cycle
pretty-
now.
yeah.
pretty.
It's usually August, early September is when it hits, and
So this, anyways. So we first had it there. This is, if you like a sweet bourbon,
it is, yeah, very much
Yes.
so.
this is one of the best for that. In my
This is
opinion.
Matthew McConaughey's personal brand, personal flavor, I guess.
Yes.
You could call it.
From that first taste, even before it has a chance to cool and bloom with the melting ice, you still get that. Some bourbons, there's a marked difference between that first warm taste
Yeah,
and the later cooled, bloomed taste.
Right.
And there's a difference with this. It's just more full.
right.
And it's just, I can't speak well enough about
This
this.
is the first time someone's signature other than Eddie Russell's has appeared on a bottle of
Oh yeah,
Wild Turkey with Matthew McConaughey's signature on
very
the
much so.
label.
Yeah, and give Martin credit, he's provided us with these large ice spheres.
I've
Balls.
got big balls.
He's got big icy balls.
That's right. Yeah, but it does help. It really does, because it doesn't melt too fast.
Right.
And that's one of the things I've discovered, that you want that chill and you want that bloom, but it will become essentially watered down if it goes too fast. This here stays, and you can enjoy it longer.
Yeah,
I like
yeah.
that. It
Good deal.
has a distinct advantage.
And Cajun, I poured you
Monk's Road.
Monk's Road small batch, which is the more weeded one.
It's the more weeded one. Like I say, it's in my backyard. Some of them bourbon seeds have been heading over that way, so here in a few years we'll be actually having some production from that. And it's really nice. It's real smooth. It's got that little bit of vanilla sweetness to start with, but then you get that secondary warmth that's not peppery. It's cinnamon. It's got a
Yes.
cinnamon flavor
cinnamon,
to it.
Yes.
And then it follows up with a kind of a tartness on the backside.
Yeah.
It's really good. It's nice. It's enjoyable. If you like an old-fashioned, it'd probably be an excellent old-fashioned maker.
I do love a good old fashioned. I do. I got a buddy of mine, Bill Glass, that makes some fantastic old fashions.
But just a little fact back on the Wild Turkey, actually went by the Wild Turkey Distillery this past week and
Yes, you have really been hitting
didn't
the
do the tour
distilleries.
there. But we stopped by because we went up to Four Roses for a special tasting. And while at Wild Turkey, I picked up a limited release bottle only for their gift shop.
Yes, a lot of the
That's
distilleries are
10
doing
years
that,
old,
yeah.
and we got a couple bottles of those waiting to give a try here coming up.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
I look forward when you're with your place. That
I guess
we'll
I need to
there.
do a blog post on all these distilleries.
Yes, you
recipes.
Yes,
do.
I
you
haven't actually
and the
done
Imperator
one.
both need to,
That'd be a
to do
good
some blog
subject.
posting. Yes.
10-year-old Wild Turkey would have to be phenomenal.
Oh
Oh,
yes.
Wild Turkey is one of our favorites. There's no question.
oh.
It's always
At $20, you can't go wrong with just regular
Yeah.
old 86
Mhm.
proof
84,
Wild Turkey.
84,
or
84.
Yeah, it's
whatever it is.
like that the Old Forester Signature 100.
Yeah.
No,
You know,
can't
it's
beat
a
it, yeah.
$20 bottle, but with a screw top.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
But I will toss in one of the best tours that I hit in the past 2 weeks. My uncle was in town from Florida, and we're both bourbon aficionados. Him even more so because he has more years on me. But we went over to Jim Beam in Claremont,
Yes.
and they had an
Yeah.
excellent tour, very, very good tasting product lineup. They actually had a new malted bourbon come out that reminds you very much of a good Scotch.
Really?
interesting.
Very
Wow.
interesting. So when you see that malted on these bourbons coming out now, it's got that more earthy flavor to
In other
them.
words, don't be afraid of it, right?
Don't be afraid of them.
Okay.
They have an excellent bowling restaurant there too. Got an awesome cheeseburger there to
I've been by
end
that
up after
place
the tour.
a million
So
times, and I've never been in it.
highly recommend it. I like I say, I need to put a blog post together and go through
Yes,
what the past couple of weeks have been here.
Yeah,
on the
that thing about
tours.
the restaurant really intrigued me because that sounded great. I think Makers has
Makers
a restaurant
Makers
as
has
well.
I have been to that.
I have not been. I've been to Makers for their Christmas extravaganza, but I've not been there to the restaurant.
And the
I've
Boys
done the
Town
tour
Bourbon
and the other.
Company, which is a whole nother animal that we really need to discuss. Probably next month with the Bourbon Fest coming up. But they have a very good restaurant there, too.
Yes,
Nice,
they do.
nice.
I've eaten there, and it's wow.
So let me ask you this: and I don't mean to ignore the Imperator,
no.
but he doesn't drink bourbon. He can't. I mean, I
No.
suppose you could.
I mean,
I
we
can't-
laid these circumstances out.
I can, but I don't.
Right.
we
You know,
appreciate
given
that.
your liver issues.
Given
yes.
Yeah, well, the fact that, 3 people gave up their livers for me to be here today.
Right.
You're a caretaker.
I'm a caretaker.
Yeah.
Yes, you have a
So,
responsibility. You have a responsibility
Yeah.
to
And,
those.
and to be fair, I mean, I would be smoking a cigar, but we don't smoke indoors anymore. in
Right, yeah.
houses.
Well,
You
you
can
know,
do that on my porch
On
next
your
month.
porch
Yes,
next month,
outdoors
I
on the
actually
porch.
have
I
some
can do
cigars that I can break
and-
out.
Oh.
It's a possibility. Yeah.
And I can still
yeah.
do that. Although I haven't since I've had my transplant, but I've got a huge selection of
Well, I mean, that sounds like
high-end classic cigars.
next
You know-
month,
And
listeners,
so-
we're going to have a special treat.
I'm going to be seeing the former pastor tonight. I will ask him for some recommendations because I wouldn't mind going out and getting something.
And
bring
he
that, 'cause-
never invites me to anything. I'm
Well,
gonna have to
I'll-
show up and really complain to him.
Well, we'll be at
so they-
Preston Crossing tonight at 8:00.
Oh, that
Okay.
might be a thought.
Yes.
Just show up.
Yes.
So-
Well, actually, the deacon I've known since
That's right.
I've known since he was in elementary school.
That's right. You
Right.
guys
You've
go
known
way back.
that deacon longer than you've known this one.
I've
Yeah,
known.
that's-
I've known.
he was a
known-
classmates of mine too. Absolutely, we called him
Yes.
Baby Deacon because
Yeah.
he was the youngest.
he was the youngest for
He
a
was the
while.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yes.
I
9
know.
months younger than me.
So yeah,
was
I mean,
enough.
I've known him since he was,
Yeah, you should
in
show up.
Real baby
7th
deacon, yeah.
grade.
Yeah.
But- What I don't want to segue too much, but I wanted to ask Cajun, how would you compare the tour? Because my favorite tour that I've been on so far has been the Woodford. How would you compare that to the ones you've seen? Because you went and did that one recently too.
Yes, I did. I did that one the week before, and I'd done the Woodford tour 8 years ago, probably.
Okay.
And the campus has changed some. The tour's a
really?
little bit different. It's not exactly the same. They're not as liberal with the bourbon or the bourbon balls anymore.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
Bourbon balls were pretty much a free-for-all on the table back when I did it before. I mean, if you wanted
Oh,
several,
wow.
you could have several. And, of course, at that point, the Woodford lineup is pretty much just one line.
True. Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah,
Now
that
it has
makes-
expanded.
So, like I
that
say,
was-
it has changed in several different ways. Now, I really enjoy it. It's a different from the Beam. Beam with the restaurant there, you can stop and eat in afterwards. Makes it just a tad maybe above Woodford, but they're both excellent.
The thing that impressed me with Woodford was it just spoke as a very classy
Yes.
presentation. When I first walked in there, all I could think is, oh, it's like choirs of angels singing when I first walked
Oh,
in there.
my only complaint with Woodford, I can do without their little mixed cocktail on the tasting lineup at the end.
Yeah, well,
that did not impress me, and it kind of threw me off.
the thing
because
I
of
didn't
that.
like about it was they had the rye second or third. Rye should always come last.
Yeah, we've
Always
discussed
should
that
come last.
before, but yeah, they've got a cocktail mixer there, and they've actually got several. I think this was some kind of lemonade mix type thing.
Yeah,
or
yeah.
something along that line. Strawberry lemonade for the go with the bourbon, and it just didn't impress me. It didn't belong in the bourbon tasting lineup. I mean, I may be off to the side if somebody else wants to try that. I'm sure they're trying different markets to bring them on in, but
And,
Yeah.
And for those of you in the audience that may be considering doing a lot of these bourbon tours, and
Which
what
you
have
should.
which you should, when you head down to like the Jim Beam Distillery there in Claremont, right, pretty much almost across the street, right, you've got Bernheim Forest down there,
yes, you do.
Right, exactly.
which is one of the best botanical conservatories in the United States.
Yeah.
And also the savior of the American chestnut tree.
True, and they have the forest
And
giants
they have
there
the
at the
forest
moment.
giants.
yeah,
Oh,
but
yes.
it's a relatively recent thing.
It is
addition.
a wonderful place to pick up your food and what have you at a restaurant and go sit in Mother Nature and see some amazing, beautiful things and have a picnic with your bourbon.
They actually have some night events coming up with lighting and everything here in the next few weeks, couple weeks. I forget the exact dates, but I saw that just the other day.
Mm-hmm.
Go to
Yeah,
the website, you'll find it all.
Burnham has come a long, long way.
Oh, it
it's
has.
one of the very
Wow.
best places around. Yeah,
I love
Yes.
I love these shout outs during bourbon break. We have
Mhm.
Shout out to Wally and Log Still there. So hello
Mhm.
Wally Dant, and Shout out to Bernheim and Claremont and all the distilleries. And
And we've only scratched the surface.
I mean,
There's
we
Cajun
didn't even talk
barbecues.
about Heaven Hill. I know they have a nice,
didn't.
brand new facility. out
Oh,
here.
yeah,
I
yeah, they
have to-
do. Here's a cute fact. I mean, I remember when they started the Bourbon Trail years ago. The Bourbon Passport that you can get stamped
Yeah,
and so
yeah.
forth as you go around was basically one page folded over 3 times. Now it's a $15 booklet.
Oh yes, it is a marketing tool, is what it is.
Everything
It
Yeah.
is, but it's so damn popular, and that's one of the reasons that people have. You would almost think this is collusion in
Well-
many ways.
Well, it is.
It
3
is
levels
but
to the
it's-
Bourbon Trail now. You have your classic level, you have your small still craft type, and then you have, I call it the newer line, like the BBC, even though they fall underneath the classic for some reason, where they're doing more fusion stuff and so
Yeah.
forth and mixing. Morton, when you went, did you do the tasting at the BBC? Or did you just go out there and eat?
I probably just what did we do? I don't.
Okay, well, let me
we
bring
did
this up. It
we,
might jog
we
your
got to
memory.
tour the Rick House. I remember doing
Okay.
that, and we went through the facility. I don't think we got to taste anything.
Okay, well, the tasting there, one of the products that they put up with their tasting line, they give you a clear spirit before it becomes bourbon.
Oh yes.
And
Light
it's
dog.
amazing. Yes,
I've
it's
seen
like
that.
tequila. I mean, it reminded
Yes.
me a lot of tequila.
Heaven
Very
Hill did the
interesting.
same thing when
For
we were out
somebody
there.
that
They had
doesn't
some of
like
that. Yeah.
The classic bourbon that's been classic, if they bottle that, you find that may be an alternative
It's just
Yeah.
simple
to
corn
somebody.
I
It's
think they did
corn
give
whiskey,
us.
essentially,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
But theirs had a very distinct tequila likeness to it.
Yeah.
Well,
I think we did get to try something right out of the barrel. When it
Yes.
hadn't been
They
aged.
had a barrel in the no, it was aged in the warehouse where they used
It
the
wasn't
copper
done
grass
though.
dipper.
Yeah, it was like woo, that kind of deal.
Yeah, that cask strength stuff. That's some
Yeah,
major stuff.
So at that time, they were just beginning to get their own product out. They had been contract for extra production for other places mostly, and they were just getting themselves underway with their product and again the restaurant.
And this
And the
was
whole
where, This was
facility.
where again?
This is
Bardstown
Bardstown.
Bourbon
Okay,
Okay,
Company.
that's what I thought.
Bardstown
BBC.
Bourbon, that,
Right, yeah.
that very new facility there in
Right, which
Bardstown.
I've not been to myself.
Yeah,
I've
a
not
friend
been
of mine
to many, actually.
from my work there lives very nearby, and she knows everybody. She knows Wally.
Very visually fascinating. If
Well,
you're going
she
up
knows-
the bluegrass,
she knows
the
the-
warehouse is all glass on one of them.
Yes.
Oh,
and
yeah.
She
When
knows
you're
those
from the area
fellas.
like Cajun and I are, you kind of know everybody.
know everybody,
anyway.
so,
They know
yes.
Yeah.
you usually.
So it's pretty awesome we really got a like an in-person, very small group
Yeah. it's-
walkthrough of everything.
I'm glad you mentioned that because it's something that, especially for our international listeners and for people all across the country.
We hope to have some.
Well,
Yes.
yeah, absolutely. You don't really understand. We talk about the bourbon and all that this area comes with it. One of the things that we don't emphasize enough because it's just natural to us is the hospitality that is part of this industry.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it is not accidental. It comes from the country and from the people where we grew up. That is just, and here in Louisville, it's the same way. We
Yeah.
kind of bled over. We are a very hospitable, welcoming community.
Yeah.
Enormously so.
And the realization that this can be a big deal
Yeah.
helps.
It
Oh,
is.
yeah.
It
Yes.
reinforces.
It brings
but yes,
people together.
Yes,
it really
but you're
does.
right. There's especially when you get out into the rural area, there is a very natural hospitality to it.
Very much
They
so.
love to talk about bourbon.
Oh, yeah.
They're
And
glad to see you. Generally glad to see you,
Yeah.
no matter where you're from.
And
Yeah.
food.
And food, it's
Heck
great.
yeah.
It all
But
goes with it.
one of the things we've got here is we have a huge change in Kentucky that's happening now. Not too many years ago, and we can remember all this time, the big things here, bourbon was good, but it was small.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
big
oh, yeah.
things were tobacco,
Yep.
Right.
Yes.
which fell out of fashion here.
Very
Yeah.
rapidly, actually.
Very rapidly.
Yes.
Uh,
Whoever would have thought that Kentucky would have been one of those places that fewer people smoke than do.
Yes.
Well, it still has a
And-
very high per capita
Yes,
number
it
of
is.
Does,
smokers
but still
compared to
it's-
other places, but it's
but we're
not as
we're not growing it so
Yeah,
much
we're
anymore.
it's
The
yeah.
other thing that's falling out of favor now is the horse racing industry.
There's some
Because-
truth to that.
because of concerns about animal welfare and things like that. As a matter of fact, this past season, they ended up shutting down
Down.
Churchill Downs and moving it to Ellis, I
Ellis
believe.
Park, yeah.
In Henderson, Kentucky.
Moving the
exactly.
whole meat.
And even Churchill Downs, which is, you know, a huge industry here in the state, is changing over because what they're trying to do is become the legalized casinos of Kentucky, which refuses to legalize casinos.
Well, because ironically, to be a protectionist
Of
the horse racing industry,
which is falling out of favor and dropping down.
Yeah, so
But sports book,
sports book,
we're getting our sports
yes.
book soon. So
But bourbon has taken a place at the forefront for tourism here.
the idea is to transform it into the same thing
Exactly.
California has with Napa and wine.
With the
Wines,
wineries, yes.
Wine.
You know what's interesting? When we were growing up, if you remember movies and television, whenever somebody
Mhm.
drank, what did they pour? It was scotch. They
Yeah.
poured scotch. Nowadays, it's almost always a bourbon.
Usually Blanton's for the most part.
well, I mean,
the
just-
movies industry.
Somehow,
these days.
the
Somebody's got to end with Blanton in the movie industry.
Yeah. Although I was now that I know more about bourbon than at one time, you know, it always cracks me up when somebody goes up to the bar and they say, "Give me a bourbon," and that's all they say.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, you need a lot more information to actually get something in your
well,
drink.
you know, when last time we were at
Well,
Cage's
no,
house,
well house, well bourbon.
Yeah.
yeah, you're going to get
I was
Kentucky
kind of
Tavern.
impressed when we were out at Cajuns the last time, and I had not, believe it or not, I had not seen the John Wick movies, and we put them on, and of course he's drinking Blanton's all over the place.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
very recognizable,
Oh yeah.
Yes.
and it's
Well,
just kind of like the
I mean-
product placement is
Oh,
everywhere.
just
Yeah,
for
the
placement,
product
my
placement.
place, I think I'm up to a total of 71 bottles now across the kitchen.
we're gonna help
cabinet.
We bow to your greatness.
I was
sir.
say I have 8. So
Next time we're
can't
there, we'll
compete.
help you reduce that
Yes.
number.
I think I have 10 or 11 still,
Yeah.
but they're getting down. I don't think there's any that's above
Yes.
half.
The Statesman's almost gone, so that'll get me to 7. I did the last time I bought. I kind of said, well, you know, let's do something kind of dumb. I bought one bottle of kind of I guess it's more mid-range. It's not super high-end, but it's the Town Branch from Lexington. It's about 35 or so.
That's good. We had that at my place last time.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, and it was
Another sweet one.
again.
Yes.
There's never been one we've tried that we've not liked. With
No.
one exception.
One exception.
I was gonna
One
say, there's
exception.
Only one exception.
Well, I'm testing that hypothesis because the other thing I bought was Old Fitzgerald.
Yeah, I saw that over
$12
there.
a
I saw that over there. But you know, some of those like it's same price point as Very Old Barton, and you know, Very Old Barton's fine. You know,
Yeah,
Old
it is.
Granddad,
And-
it's the regular. It's fine too. And
Evan,
it's
Evan Williams is $2 more,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's outstanding.
absolutely.
They
Yeah,
have
price
been
point.
upping their advertising of late, and marketing as you know, trying to up their brand in the eyes of consumers. I've noticed.
Yes.
Which
Yes.
one?
Evan Williams.
Evan
yes.
Yeah, that's right. Well,
Uh,
that's Cajun's go-to bourbon.
It
Yes.
is my
Oh, it's
well, the
excellent.
1783 line, the
Correct.
small
That's
batch
what it was
is my
specific.
is my daily.
Yes, and
I
that's
wanna
the
pick
one that the small batch is what I've been seeing advertised in a
And
very classy
it's-
way.
Yeah, I mean it's probably still under $20.
Yeah, let it be clear, listeners. My 71 bottle total at the moment is a collector's thing. It's not a drinking thing by any means. Some of it's an investment thing, even.
Well, yeah, because you've
Right.
got some Wellers out there that we can't
Well, you
crack.
can't get a hold of. Yeah.
Yeah, and that one of these days, you did say there's a.
I did say if I pay the house off and stuff,
That's
one
when
of
we
them bottles
crack it.
going to go.
Well,
that's
I
when we
think
crack it. Yeah.
I think all of us, especially those of us that are working on the publishing venture, should have one high-end bottle we are saving
Oh, for when we
for
that
when the
moment.
books hit the real or digital shelves.
Okay.
Well,
Okay.
two of us already done that.
Well, that's true, but well, yeah, I've got.
Well, I am looking forward to celebrating with Francis because I think it's imminent.
I think so
feel
too.
it.
I
feel it.
I've got the first. I've got 2 publishers that have interest in my first book, and one of them is interested also in the second book. So it could be imminent. So I'm gonna have to buy. I'll bow to the group here. What would you all want me to buy, and I'll get it.
Well, if you can find
Pappy's.
it.
Chapter 23.
Yeah, I was gonna say Pappy's is probably not gonna.
I think
be
that's out of
possible.
his range,
Yeah.
no matter how.
Honestly,
well it sits.
I think a
Well,
good
if you hit
Wellers
the-
or
if you hit one of
Booker's.
the lotteries for distribution when that comes out every
Yeah.
year, you can get a good bottle of Pappy's for under 300.
Try selling that to my wife.
But I mean,
I mean,
She
I-
likes you, but I don't think even
She
you
doesn't
would do
like you that
well,
much.
yeah,
You
I
haven't.
know.
Nobody likes you
but
that much.
well, yeah, they do.
You haven't tried any.
but
E.H. Taylor yet, have you?
No, I do not have any of that. Yeah.
So Eagle Rare, E.H. Taylor,
Eagle Rare. There's your answer.
if you can find them.
Eagle Rare is the one.
Elma T. Lee, also, if you can find it.
I have-
Sometimes you can
yes.
find them for under 100. A lot of times you'll see them selling for above 3.
And
It varies.
Kentucky Owl. There's like a Kentucky Owl at
I
like
have
150
I've
Yeah.
seen
price
that
point
out there.
that I want to try.
Now,
E.H. Taylor's another good one.
I've seen that
Sounds
one.
hard to find.
Occasionally, I've seen
one
it.
of the things we need to take into consideration, though, when we're talking about these prices, these price points, is we're buying local at the distributors, and we're buying
Sometimes the distillery
and
itself,
the
yeah.
distillery
Well,
itself.
it's usually a little higher there.
that
Yeah.
that secondhand market out there, as far as for the rest of the country or the world,
Yeah.
is ridiculous right now.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh yeah.
And there are issues with resales too.
Oh, yes.
Justin's Bourbons in Lexington, Kentucky, just got raided,
Yes.
and they confiscated all their bourbon.
Oh my!
See that's very interesting. I was just reading about this.
Yeah,
For a long time, it was illegal to
Yes.
resell bourbon.
exactly.
So if you had come across a sealed bottle that
Mhm.
Granddad had been sitting on in the cabinet,
yeah,
you couldn't sell it.
exactly.
And then it became legal to do so
In Kentucky,
in Kentucky, and that's what.
Yeah, that's a big ball here in Louisville that advertising. We'll
Right.
buy your dusty bottles and so forth.
Yeah.
The ones you
And
don't want.
that's how Justin's
That's
really got started. They began buying up
and
became-
reselling.
and reselling these bottles, but a real retailer has
Mhm.
to keep really good records
exactly
of what they're doing, and apparently they're not doing
They
it.
weren't doing
Yeah,
it.
it's controlled substance. I mean,
yeah.
it's not.
Right,
You
so
know, it's not like you're selling Coca
that-
Cola.
and
And of course, there's lots of opportunities to
and
be
you-
fraudulent
Well,
with
yeah,
this.
and
Yes,
there-
very
there
much
is.
so.
That's the Pappy
Counterfeiting,
scandal.
And
Yeah.
and God knows how many of us are guilty of stealing our parents' booze and replacing it with something else in the bottle.
I can't say
So-
that I did that.
I
that
can't say I did that,
that
yeah.
secondhand
I just stole it. I never
that
replaced it.
secondhand market, beware. High-end bourbons are being fraudulently sold, but they may get a bottle and sell something else in it, a Pappy, for example.
Sure, absolutely.
And the other thing is, you've got people who are actually stealing the bourbons.
Oh yeah.
Pappy's a prime example.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
there
there
have
were-
been break-ins
there
at,
have been
the
break-ins.
wholesalers, and stuff gets
So,
stolen.
Well, what was it? That one truck was
Rerouted. shall we say.
rerouted. Yes,
Yeah.
that's the word I'm looking for. Several years ago, that was
Yeah.
a Pappy's truck,
Uh-huh.
wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, well that's terrific. I think we did about 15 minutes plus.
Yeah, at least.
Yeah, oh yeah, about 20.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right. Yeah, we're actually coming
Probably-
up on an hour here, very shortly.
So I just got to have a couple more things too. One of the things that is at least somewhat academically attributed to the Manson crimes
Yeah.
is broader acceptance of conspiracy theories.
Interesting.
really?
You know,
you kept that one
I
close
mean,
to your chest.
You
there.
know,
We
when
didn't
you
this was
think
coming.
about, of course, no one would go along with a conspiracy theory in the 1960s,
Mm,
but after
JFK.
Charlie,
Well, I was going to say
JFK, yeah.
JFK comes up.
yes, JFK,
Well, even King and RFK.
but
Yeah.
but the
all the way back to the Civil War, easily.
yeah, but
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, no conspiracy.
broader and broader and broader acceptance.
Well,
Again, these things are cumulative. You're
well,
right.
it's that
Yes.
news
You're right.
cycle.
It's right. You're piling up from Kennedy
Mhm.
to Dr.
Kennedy, King, and Kennedy.
Yeah, and to Robert, and then
Well, not only that, Vietnam.
and then Vietnam, and then it's like, well, now everybody feels like the government's hiding something, and so
No.
this,
Well, they just came out with aliens, so
Well, yeah,
And
Ross,
then
I
when
was-
Quayle invented the internet, it all went crazy, right?
No,
Oh, yeah.
Gore.
Oh, I'm
Gore,
sorry,
Gore
Gore.
invented
Almost
it.
same thing.
yeah,
potatoes.
Yeah.
yeah,
For a Quayle
yeah,
reference.
that is probably the best pun we've ever done
yes,
on
that's
this,
very
on
good.
this
Yes,
show.
yes.
Very good.
We bow
Best-
to you, Emperor
The
Robert,
best
for that one.
inside joke, yeah.
That was damn good. That
was good.
Very good.
That was
But
very
the conspiracy theory now about Charlie is that he was a participant in MK Ultra
Mhm.
Seriously?
and was fed LSD by the CIA,
Mhm.
and they directed him basically to
Yeah.
start the cult and commit the murders.
Well, apparently he would have been probably a classmate of the Unabomber Ted Kaczynski then too, because it's the same thing.
yeah, the same deal.
All the crazy comes from MK Ultra and LSD.
Yeah.
Well, I would agree with at least half of that.
So
I'll
there's
give it a
just-
2% possibility.
There-
I mean, I won't totally discount it.
Yeah,
There
exactly.
used
I
to
mean,
be a thing where if you were wanting to get off of the idea of having to go on the stand or anything like that or be on a jury, one of the things you could claim was LSD use. That if you'd used it more than 2 or 3 times, that you're not qualified to be on a jury anymore.
Lucy
Nowadays,
Dacus
isn't that a
comments.
requirement?
Did you see that in the news today about the woman in New York had triplets, and they would not dismiss her from jury duty? She brought all 3 triplets with her to court to sit in there, and they finally dismissed her after being there for 2 or 3 hours with the children.
Yep.
Now, is that ridiculous or what?
Absolutely.
Well, I mean,
yeah.
look at the things that's been happening here. I don't know if you saw the post that I made of the video of the woman who was left in a house down here.
Oh,
on
the
Park
chained.
Hill,
Yes.
chained by the neck
All over the
to the
news.
floor. She got left there. He said he was going to come back and kill her. She broke out a window, screaming and what have you. The house was locked up so good they had to use a ladder and come in through a second floor window
Wow.
to rescue her.
And let me tell you, watching those big, wide cops
Oh yeah, and that's
climb up
rickety
that
ladder.
shaky ladder
Oh yeah,
was a little funny. I mean, great for them to get in there and rescue that woman. That's great, but that was a little funny.
Yeah,
to watch.
It is a bizarre story
talk,
for this
talk
town.
about
Yeah.
the 24-hour news cycle and the international news cycle.
So this whole idea of the conspiracy theory, I think that's something that is worth pursuing just a little bit here.
Go ahead.
So, for the most part, prior to the 1960s,
Mhm.
most Americans had, and this is probably true, probably from World War I through the 60s, had great trust in their government.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
And
absolutely.
the news.
And, well, yes, in
yeah,
the
and
news
the media
too.
too. You're
Well,
exactly
and the government was not an omnipresent part of your life. either.
Not yet.
No.
Not yet.
Not yet.
And now that in itself is an
Right,
aberration.
and there are exceptions.
Yeah,
but
Roswell, New Mexico.
It's
Yeah.
very, it's a minority thing.
Yes,
Of,
yes.
we don't trust because of there.
Yes,
There were dissidents to World War One, and
Right, and Roosevelt knew about the Japanese coming to Pearl Harbor and all that,
Yeah.
all that crap. But for the most part, though, most Americans trusted the government, which is actually a very unique period of time in American history, because prior to World War One, I would say, probably maybe even Spanish American War, because that's when
Yeah.
the country really rallied around
Right. Yeah.
that cause. There is great distrust at the federal level. Certainly prior to the Civil War
Oh yeah.
and after.
yeah.
to
In
a
the
certain
South,
Just ask the South.
in the South,
Just ask the
especially,
South,
Yeah,
yes.
but that
as
led through. Yeah.
as they said in the movie about
it's a
Ted Kennedy and the Spanish American War, the senator from Mississippi said, we don't celebrate 4th of July in the South, but after this war, we just might do that.
That's right. Yeah.
And that was paid by the great Gary Busey.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Rough Riders.
Rough Riders,
General
yes.
Wheeler.
General
Yes,
Wheeler.
Wheeler.
Correct.
That's who it was. Yes, General Wheeler. Imperator, you were going to say?
Well, yeah, I mean, but there was a lot of, because of all the availability of information that we have now, and as it's grown since the advent of radio, television, and now the internet, with all that information comes the ability to have more and more distrust.
Well, yes, because
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, we're more willing to make connections that maybe
Yes.
aren't there.
Exactly.
exactly, because
talking about-
so much of what is out there
Confirmation
isn't
bias.
trustworthy.
It's crap.
Exactly.
It is. It's crap, because a lot of it, and this is true for still the major media, a lot of what is put forward as fact and news is thinly veiled opinion.
Yes.
Very much
Yes,
so.
very
And-
much.
And that
This
is
not
true.
the Walter Cronkite.
No,
news.
well, but if you go back and look at what he did,
I know. Still,
it was still,
yeah,
but people accepted that because he was so trusted.
yeah.
But now we've gotten to this point where, starting in the '60s with the flower children generation, the
Circling us back
The
around.
Mansons and
all of
All
that
of that.
started this distrust of the adults. Well, actually, it really started in the '50s with the beatnik
Yeah.
generation,
then you had the long-haired hippie freaks.
and then you had the long-haired
Hare
hippie
Krishna?
freaks.
Yeah.
Oh, Krishna,
and
Krishna.
yes, and the cults that sprang up, all these new
Jim
age
Jones.
A
gurus
search for meaning.
search for meaning
the Moonies.
that was beyond and different from
Yes.
everything that had gone before.
Mhm.
Right.
So of
Scientology.
course, Well, yes, that's a great.
Yeah.
Wow, that's one we could
That's a
spend an
whole
episode.
nother
Its own
can of
episode.
worms.
Yeah.
Oh, we're going to be hunted down now.
Tom Cruise is going to come visit us.
Oh,
Bring it on.
Hey,
Mean Morton's ready for him.
I'll set up the extra mics for that one.
Yeah, really. So
Cajun may have noticed that there was a very clear field of fire around my house.
It's a beautiful sight. A
It
beautiful
is,
sight,
yes.
I tell you.
Cajun has the best field of fire, though.
Yes,
He
yes.
That's right. When Tom Cruise comes after us, that's where we're going.
And water sources.
Yeah, for
And water
suburbia, I
sources,
only
yes.
have
We
the
can
one.
make our own
Yeah,
That's
white
right.
lightning anyway.
yeah.
So this transition, the 60s, we've talked about this a little bit, and maybe this deserves its own episode. The societal change that is rooted in the 1960s has had not a passing effect. It's been a permanent
Yes,
change.
Yeah.
it is.
Yes,
It
yes.
is,
Society.
very much.
It's not just the sexual revolution. It's not just, don't trust anybody over 30.
Well, once you beat the Nazis,
What else is there?
yeah, it doesn't seem like there's anything else to do. And so young people get out there and they're told, well, your parents' generation saved the world. What are you going to do?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to
how
top
do you-
that.
how do
Yeah,
top
and
that?
there's
Yeah.
nothing left. There's no way for them to save the world.
Mm-hmm.
And all they see around them is this material world. And there's nothing wrong with that. A successful, prosperous nation is a good thing.
It is, but it
Mm-hmm.
depends on because that can go too far.
As
Well,
long as it
yeah,
doesn't leave you
material-
behind.
That material society,
Mm-hmm.
when that prosperity becomes the be all end all,
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's a
that
problem.
overt
Well, it's
materialism.
shallow. It's hollow and shallow.
Yeah,
But hey,
Well,
at least
it's
they're-
idolatrous. That's
but,
what I'm talking.
But everybody's still got a roof over their head.
Not
yeah,
necessarily.
it kind of came. It kind of came into its own in the '80s, where it was where the pursuit of wealth for its own sake
Yes.
seemed to be take over so much of
Yeah,
what
but
we've done.
The
and I don't think
decade
it's,
of excess.
But
and I
greed
don't
is
think it's
good.
gone away.
Well, that's
no,
true, but
no.
we also had the space race. I mean, basically, that was what everybody drew around after that, comparing to World War II.
Glad you
Until
brought
we
that
had
up.
a couple small accidents, something like that.
Well,
happen.
I'd hardly call those small, but
In the grand scheme of things, yes. I mean, think of the building from Sale and going to nuclear carriers and so forth.
Well, I mean,
there was accidents.
We had.
they just weren't quite as
Apollo-
visible.
They
Apollo-
wasn't quite as visible.
Apollo 1
Yeah.
burn up on a test.
Yeah.
Yes.
We lost 3 wonderful astronauts, but that whole space race and everything else, it was also with the advent of TV.
It was
and
that it made it.
It did.
Well, it also didn't hurt that the guy who started it was young, good looking, had a beautiful wife,
Oh yeah.
and then died 2.5 years after he proclaimed the plan to get on the moon.
And,
Yeah,
and there's a
exactly.
competition built into it.
And
that
there's a competition.
But it
We're,
was
we're
something that the
competitive and we
general
wanted to win.
population got around and gathered again
Exactly.
and
It was
supported
a
in
rallying,
general.
yeah,
So-
a rallying place. Yeah.
To Martin's point, though, that wasn't what the 60s generation was able to get into, because when they are asked, well, your parents saved the world, what are you going to do? The first half of the boomers were involved in the space race.
Yeah.
The second half, the ones we think of as the flower children of the, not the
Yeah.
beatnik generation, but the flower children. Those are the ones that really caused a lot of this societal change, because they weren't the ones that are involved in the space race, because
Not at all. They were too young.
They were too young.
Yeah.
Maybe the 70s and certainly maybe into the 80s, but at the time when all the stuff societally started changing, they're still in their formative years.
Right.
And I think Martin's point about they have no direction, no rallying cry. And, and yes, the consumption in the 80s was very
Enjoyable.
it was very enjoyable.
It was, wasn't it?
You don't even
But
remember.
you don't even remember it. I do.
That's right.
I was going to say conspicuous, but yes. But
I've heard the stories in my life.
but it wasn't. I don't think it was. I think the 80s in that respect get a horribly bad rap. Partially that's because liberals just can't stand Reagan because he was successful. But for the most part, a lot of that excess consumption wasn't, I don't think, as bad as people give it.
No.
No, we
no,
tend to-
reputation.
Whatever
And
people
it's-
bought, someone had to make.
Someone had to make. Yes.
A rising tide does lift all boats. People scoff, but
Well, jumping
It
back to the
works.
population you were referring to, the second half there, couldn't you almost say they had an excess of things that wasn't available before to them that kind of
Oh, yeah.
gave them
Oh, yes.
no
Oh,
direction?
yeah.
with the
Yeah.
I mean, they
technological
wasn't
changes.
striving and working towards things that other people had to before they came around. They had a lot given
yeah,
to
I
them in a
mean,
sense.
the average suburban life in the late '60s is a comfortable life.
It is.
Yeah.
And
I
one of the
When
things
you
that
look
I-
at a film like The Graduate, there's a reason they're sitting out by the pool because it's possible.
yes.
The economy, the situation made it possible for them to be a success.
And this, so, blame it on the greatest generation, the first half of the boomers, whoever you want to. But this comfort
Yeah.
is the root cause, not that particular time period, but that societal comfort, that excess consumption, whatever aspects you want to talk about, they are the absolute root cause for the problems we see in society today. All of the weird crap that goes on. And I'm not going to name it because I don't want to have people come and yell at us, but you know what I'm talking about. When you have nothing
Better to do.
that is, well,
Yeah.
better to do, but you
Nothing
have
to
nothing
strive for.
challenges you, nothing to strive for, that when there is no existential conflict,
Word boner.
you lose the ability to look forward to making yourself better, to being the best person you can be.
To improve
Instead,
yourself,
to improve
enrich
yourself.
Yeah.
Yes, I
There's-
hate to,
there's
to be a Picard there, but
Yeah, but there's a loss of perspective.
there's a loss of perspective when everything is so easy.
Right.
Well,
when you, it's like I could make myself better. I can contribute to the world, or I can freak out and save the world.
Well,
I think what you've nailed something that I've got to interject in here because
do it.
we're talking about a crisis of faith.
Yes.
Essentially, that's what we're talking about. Life
Yes.
has, and not to disparage that late '60s, that generation, the flower children, they had it right in certain ways. They were searching for meaning in a world, from their perspective, they then could find none. So they started to create that, and that is a basic human drive. We must have something greater than ourselves to believe in, and if we can't find it, we'll make it.
So
Yes.
Francis has just said something positive about hippies.
Oh yeah,
I'm not sure you're welcome in my home anymore.
Well, did he
I'm
say
not-
something positive?
No, not at all. I'm saying that the drive for them to seek to
Mhm.
find
It's natural.
is
It is
not only
natural.
it is natural, it is inherent to the human
But
dignity
see,
person.
Yes.
that is what made, for an example, Manson's followers so vulnerable.
Very much
Yes,
so.
exactly.
Very much so. It is because he
precisely.
got those people who were seekers.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know,
And
to
what-
use the Charlton Heston word.
And what we have
Lazy.
now in society is, as Americans, we're a spoiled country.
We are.
We are.
We are.
It's
Very
a first world
spoiled
problem. There's
compared
no
to
doubt
the-
about that.
Yeah, green hair
Well-
is a first world problem for sure.
Well, to be honest,
Very well put, sir. I like that. Yeah.
that first world thing bothers me because Earth is the third world. So American technically is a third world country. But
The third planet from the sun.
exactly, we're the third.
As the
planet.
country song would
Yes,
say.
we're
Well,
all third
and-
world people.
Well, technically, I mean, if you want to go with how they count the worlds,
count
we
the
are
worlds.
we are second world, because the Europeans are the first.
We're a third world people, but there are no first and second world people because it's kind of not hospitable there on Mercury and
Yeah,
Venus.
Mercury and Venus are kind of
Well,
out of the
I take
picture.
affront to Francis's use of the word seekers anyway.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
Go ahead.
No, I think this
But
is
not
good,
all
yeah.
of those who wander are not lost. I mean, somebody
understand,
seeking
yeah.
something usually has drive and determination. You're just talking about a bunch of lazy people that want everything given to them.
Oh no,
They didn't
not at
have
all.
that drive and determination. Seekers is not a good word for
Well,
I
describing
think
them.
Cajun's got a point there.
I think that's
because-
more true today than it was
Yeah,
perhaps in the
today,
60s.
yes.
But
At the time, if you could have talked to those, they were seeking some meaning.
right,
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, we think of
Yeah,
today,
philosophy or crapola.
the counterculture is a
Why
this
about it?
huge thing. You know, this
Well,
historical perspective on the counterculture is a huge thing, but they were really an incredibly small minority. Most
were.
people got up, went to work,
Mhm.
went home, took care of their kids, loved their wives, took care of the houses. I mean,
These were their children who were, by
Yeah.
definition, the product of affluence.
but even
Yeah.
young people by 69, 70, people that were turning 22 or 23,
Yeah.
by and large, the huge majority
Mhm.
had jobs of some sort and were taking care of themselves.
the
They
affluent.
wasn't seeking. They wanted somebody to tell them the meaning of life. They didn't want to do
And-
the work to find it out.
But you see,
Exactly. I think Cajun's
what
right.
Interesting,
One of the things that
possibly.
happened with the idea of Manson and what Manson was able to do with controlling and his power and what have you was you ended up also at that same time with a number of other things. All these various yogi gurus.
Yeah, yeah.
Things
Yeah, that's
like that
straight out of the
coming
Haight
around.
Ashbury thing
Exactly.
in San
the
Fran.
The cults
Yeah.
coming up. And the other thing is you've got in this country, you've also got the marketing of religion, grifting for Jesus.
Well, essentially, what you're talking
And
about is the
huge
rise of a
churches.
predatory
Exactly.
group,
And
class, even.
what they're doing is they're picking the same things like Manson did. Manson was doing it on a personal level. But what these people are doing is going through and they're using the same technique in a general sense, a prosperity gospel.
Oh,
So
yeah.
what you're saying is there's not a far leap from Charles Manson to Joel Osteen.
Manson was
I
serving
don't want to
up
be hunted
pleasure.
down for that. I mean that.
Well, I mean,
In this country, that's tantamount to going
I mean,
and burning a Quran.
I think you.
but yes,
I think you can make a
yes, you
serious
could.
argument
you can.
And it's-
academically that no, there's not a far leap
There's not.
from Charles Manson to Jim Baker.
But
Yeah,
you know what?
exactly. And
From an academic, I just put the brakes on that just for a second because I want to point out
Yes, go ahead.
from an academic perspective, you could make that case about any of the major world religions. That's what
Yes.
makes people like Manson
Mhm.
and the Hare Krishnas and Joel Osteen and
Scientology.
Scientologists,
Scientology.
what makes them successful in whatever sphere they happen to be working in. They're using techniques that are actually used for good in other places
Can be,
Yes.
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 and used for, if not outright evil in the case of Manson, then at the very
Control and power.
Yeah.
least misdirected desires.
Well, they're,
I'll
in the
distill
case
it
of
down
Osteen.
for
they
you.
are taking
What was that?
I'll distill it down for you. They're saving up pleasure without the price of pain to know what they're enjoying as pleasure.
Yes, they want the crown without the cross.
There
Yeah,
you go.
or they want the privilege without the responsibility.
Mhm.
Right, and we all know rights always have responsibility.
That's exactly right.
And
Responsibility.
It's not to say that the major good religions and what have you, that these techniques have been used for evil.
Absolutely, because that's
at
just it. They
different
are
times.
tools.
They are
Exactly.
tools,
They're
yeah,
tools. They're tools that can be used by anybody to manipulate people the way they want them to be manipulated.
Yes, look at the media.
Exactly.
Mainstream news.
The
Oh, that's another. Yeah.
the
I
whole
mean,
term propaganda.
And well, that was a good term at one time.
It
That
was.
that was a good thing.
They are tools. They are neither good nor evil.
They're
It's
morally
the person holding them and using them.
That's right.
Simple as
Yeah.
that. And
Morally
for you
neutral.
listeners out there, yes, I know it's not a visual medium, but I'm holding my pistol in one hand and my knife in the other. Don't meet me in a dark alley.
Well, that was a
Glad you're on our side.
tremendous,
Yeah.
tremendous thing, and
Thankfully, you kept your pants on.
Well, that's a tool, too.
Yes.
yeah.
And it has been used for great good.
And great evil.
No.
Fine line sometimes, fine line.
Only for good. That tool's only been used for good.
Oh, that's not what
But-
some have told me.
You know, this is.
They were very disappointed.
I know we're at.
Oh no!
Oh.
That's harsh,
I'm
brother.
sorry.
That's cold.
That's
I
harsh.
couldn't help.
You keep that up, we'll have to silence you.
It was low hanging fruit.
But you know
Here,
what?
wait a minute.
If you don't
I think you
disappoint
deserve
them,
this.
there you go.
Oh, the agonizer.
Agonizer's back.
If
yeah.
you don't disappoint them once in a while, they don't appreciate the good times you do for them.
Well, now there is something to be said for
Then you're
that.
taken
you
for granted.
You just have to study up and keep doing better.
See, this is what I've told Mrs. Robert on occasion. I do my job too well, therefore you don't need it nearly as often because you're too satisfied.
Exactly.
Oh, that's an agonizer. Give him the agonizer.
Yeah.
I get the agonizer
You
for
get the
that.
Yeah, you get it yourself.
That's
That's it. Self abuse.
Agonize
I'm
yourself.
Catholic.
And
I'm
you can
not
be
allowed
shot.
to do
It's
that.
your head won't fit up the stairs anymore with that.
Uh-huh.
Come on.
Where are we at on time at this
I-
point?
I-
way over.
We are at
Well,
114 and a half.
Yeah,
I think it's
we're
a
done.
good.
Wrap
Yes,
this
which
up.
is a shame.
Land is
because
plane. Land is plane.
It is a shame because where this conversation ended really deserves a ton more discussion.
And we can come back to it. We can circle
We're
around.
gonna have
well,
to.
well, when you
Well,
talk
I
about
mean,
the cultural milieu, which we've
Yeah.
used that many
Word
times.
boner.
Yeah, we love that. We really can go deep.
Well,
with
that yeah. I mean, that's part of our.
There's
our
a-
shtick.
there's
How deep are you going?
as deep as it takes, baby.
Whoa, Francis is froggy today.
BD. That's how deep.
Yes, him.
BD.
Anyway,
Yes, him.
Just please take off that signet ring.
Oh Lordy.
so yes,
That's
this-
ED. Elbow
Oh,
deep.
Other
I
than the
thought that was a
last-
drug.
Yeah,
Other than
that
the
too.
last two,
we have sent Mark.
right, yes.
He's cracking up. He can't finish. Come on, Captain, bring it back around.
other
Oh,
than
we're
the
having
last
fun.
2 minutes, this episode went exactly where I wanted it to go.
Okay, that's good.
Because I wanted to analyze all of these cultural trends, and again, talk about these things like the acceptance of conspiracy theories and how weird that is, and how we perceive ourselves no longer safe in our own homes since Charlie, and all of these things. So you guys did a great job. I just love this episode. So I hope the listeners
It's a good recap.
Mhm.
That sounds good.
enjoy it as well. So, Francis, buddy, what is next time?
We're going to go back to Code of Honor, and rumor has it that we're going to change everything around. We're going to do this one differently. Martin has a plan, so he tells us he's going to captain this next episode, and it's going to be an amazing, deep, deep, deep dive into something he won't tell us about, but we're looking forward to it. So you guys should be. I saw that, Cajun. he had a grotesque.
That was a rude
hand
gesture.
It was a
Rude.
signet ring hand gesture.
That's right.
I
That
don't.
was up to the elbow.
I didn't know you were Italian.
That's right. So, but be here next episode, guys. Everybody, listeners, you're gonna love it.
We'll break out the lard.
We hope you enjoyed another pointless discussion of eternal questions. Remember, new episodes drop every second and fourth Friday at 6 a.m. Eastern, just in time for your morning commute. And every fifth Friday, we drop a special Hoopajoob episode. Spread the word we are on all the major platforms, and leave us a review. That helps others find us. We're also on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, as well as our website, snakesandotters.com. Join us next time, same snake time, same otter channel.